Thank you for giving us the opportunity to present to your team. I would like to begin by acknowledging that we are on the unceded and unsurrendered territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe, who have been on this land since time immemorial. I recognize and appreciate their connection to this land, its history, and its culture. We are grateful to have the opportunity to be present on this territory today. As you've heard, my name is Marie, and if you haven't noticed, I am Black. I spent most of my life not wanting to accept the fact that I was Black. I honestly didn't think that it should matter. I am, just like you, a human being. As I've been getting older, or I want to say wiser, I have realized and have learned to accept that because of my Blackness, I am treated differently. My reality as a human being is not the same as yours. I think that the events of the last year in the United States with the whole murder of George Floyd and the following Black Lives Matter movement protest is proof that racism and equality do exist. So for me to present myself before you and introduce myself as a Black person, it is my way of being honest with myself and accepting who I really am. I am here to start this conversation because it's so important that we do so to bring the changes that we so desperately need. If I, as a Black person, am unwilling to have these dialogues, who will? How will change occur? I am here in front of you to do my part. Why are we here? Why are we having this conversation right now? Last year, back in June, our Deputy Minister Shelley Bruce sent a message to all communication security establishment employees to address current events. In her email, she wrote, I am grateful for those of you who are prepared to help me and others by explaining how it feels to be discriminated against in such terrible ways. But I also expect that some of you are wary and may not be up to that conversation right now. So here we are. In the next little while, we will be sharing with you our experience as Black Canadians. We hope to give you a glimpse of how recent events and recent comments heard have impacted us. I know that this is an uncomfortable topic. God knows that I'm completely outside of my comfort zone here. I have always avoided race discussions because I hate being placed in a position where I cannot be honest and say what I really want to say because I know what I'm going to say is going to make somebody else feel uncomfortable. My only ask for this presentation, that will last about 1 hour depending on participation, is that you learn to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. It is really a first step for any learning experience.
I'm Jonathan Goide. You can use the pronoun he, him, his, il et lui en français. I'm the son of a Black man and a white woman. When I was living in Ivory Coast in Africa, it was decided for me that I was a white visible minority. And it was also decided for me that I'm a Black visible minority here in North America. Just like Marie said it a couple of minutes ago, we are here to share with you our experiences as Blacks in Canada. So it is time to be hot in your conversation. When I say hot, I mean honest, open, and transparent. Hopefully, by providing you our insights, we can change some of your personal perceptions, which could lead to changing your organization, your community, and our country.
You will find on the yellow slides the comments we've heard this past year. And then we will give you our perspective as Black Canadians and the impacts of these comments had on us. Disclaimer though, please note that we are not experts in everything about being Black. We are not the authors of everything you'll be hearing today. This presentation is the collection of our experiences and all the best resources we thought could help raise awareness and tell our story. Don't worry, we will be sending you a copy of this presentation, so don't stress out if you cannot read all the slides. You will also notice that they are not necessarily aligned to everything we will be covering today. The deck was prepared to tell a story without having us presenting it. The deck on its own can be seen as the basic package, but you're in luck today because you're getting the VIP package where you will also get some of our personal stories. We hope that this will be an interactive session where we'll be asking you to type your comments, so please don't leave us hanging and participate. Here we go. Comment number 1.
All lives matter, not just Black lives. We are not suggesting that Black lives matter more than any other lives. A better way to understand Black lives matter is by looking at its driving phrase as Black lives matter too. So you're asking yourself, why this statement? Because it appears that Black lives are undervalued in our society. So if all lives matters, tell me why we still hear in the news about an unarmed Black person getting shot. I have a question for you. Would you run to a cancer fundraiser and say there are other diseases too? Another question. Will you crash a stranger's funeral by shouting, I also lost my mother? I don't think so. I think this is very well illustrated in the following video. It's only about 2 minutes.
So what do you feel after seeing this video? What feelings shows up for you? Feelings that were shared in previous presentations were the following: anger, frustration, sadness, embarrassing, disturbed, outraged, ashamed, awful, injustice, unfairness.
The reason there are few Black people working at CSC is because it is the reflection of the percentage of Blacks in Ottawa.
The Black population in Canada is 3.5%. The Black population in Ottawa is 6.6%. At CSC, 1.39% employees have self-identified as Black. How does your organization fare? You can see some of the stats from our federal departments on the screen. Are there stigmas associated with self-identification? Is the number of Black people low in some organization because they chose not to self-identify? I don't know, but when I walk around CSC, I don't see many people who look like me. Is this the same for you? Before the pandemic, when you walked around your department, did you see many Black employees? How many Black colleagues are in your team? How many of us do you see in meetings, on your floor, in your building? Do you have representation in your management team? In your executive team? Do you see people who look like me when you meet your clients or your stakeholders? Is there representation in your decision-making bodies or governance committees? Are our people who look like me stuck in lower level positions? It makes me wonder if there is systemic racism in our organization and across the public service. Did you know that if you apply for a job with a white sounding name, you're 50% more likely to get a call back than with a Black sounding name? The University of Toronto had a resume whitening study which found that when Black job seekers whitened their resume by changing their name to make it sound less ethnic and by removing any activities that are normally associated to Black, they were 2.5 times more likely to be selected for interviews. Does our policies and practices at our organization and in the public service in general result in the exclusion or the promotion of certain groups? Shouldn't we, as public servants, look into this? Are we underserving Canada and Canadians by not having a representative workforce? How can we ensure that our policies, our practices, and our services are truly covering Canadian interests if some of our voices are not at the table when they're being developed? My friend Shay, who leads the anti-racism implementation at DND, said this wonderful quote not too long ago. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. I'll say it again. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. Many organizations have been focusing on diversity and inclusion, which is necessary and is required, but is mainly about the flower. It is time that we take it a step further and that we focus on fixing and changing the environment, the public service environment.
Racism is only in the US. When you are part of a dominant group, why would you be expected to know about other group experiences? Let me use two examples. First one, you want to know if a building has accessibility issues. Who would you ask? An able-bodied person or a person with disabilities? Another question. If you really want to know if sexism exists, who would you ask? Men or women? So why don't we do the same with racism? If you want to know about racism, it makes sense to ask a Black person about their own experiences. Not acknowledging that racism exists is a barrier to addressing it.
Racism is not only in the US, it happens here in Canada. There are biases in a Canadian police agencies. These biases are reflected in the numbers. The stats that you see on the screen are for Canadian cities. It is a fact. Black individuals are carded more often by police. Let me share a little bit about my family. I have twin brothers who are 38 years old. One works for a private company and the other for a Canadian nonprofit organization. They are both professional, fathers with two children, and to me are upstanding citizens. But for some reason, for a period of about 3 months, at least one of them was being stopped by the police multiple times per week. They were asked to show their license and registration. They were delayed for about 30 minutes, and then they were sent on their way with no tickets issued. These delays caused them for them to arrive late at work on many occasions, and a couple of times it made them late for family dinners, which was not a good experience for them because they experienced the wrath of Marie. My biggest pet peeve is to serve cold food and dried up chicken. I plan my meals to the minute, and their delays basically messed up my event. But, anyways, that's not why we're here. Fact is, my brothers were stopped by the police multiple times per week. Why is that? Was it because they're both Black and they both wear their hair in dreads during that period of time? Well, that was their reality here in Canada. The fact that no tickets were issued makes you wonder, why were they stopped in the first place?
Recent events with George Floyd's death in police custody have opened the eyes of many individuals and organizations on the existence of systemic racism in our society. This does not only happen in the States, but also in Canada.
In our quick research, we were able to find all these Canadians who died during their encounter with the police. What's really heartbreaking is that the last time I updated this presentation, I added another name. I added the name of Jean-René Olivier, who was killed by police in Repentigny during the summer. I will not go in the detail of their situations, as I don't want this to become a debate as to were they guilty or not? Did they provoke the police or not? Bottom line, these people died in police custody and never got an opportunity to get their day in court. Would they still be alive if they were white? What worries me is that my brother's name and pictures could have easily been added to this list a couple of years ago. They were driving on Metcalfe on a Saturday. They were heading home from a gathering with friends, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning. They were stopped at a red light, and Metcalfe is a one-way street. They see a police car arriving in the opposite direction, flashing their lights at them. They see a second police car. A third arrives, a fourth, a fifth, and a sixth. The officers got out of their cars, big lights, guns pointing at them, asking them to step out of their vehicle. My brother Dominic gets out, hands in the air. Officers come, push him to the ground, handcuff him, and drag him to one of the police cars. Same thing happens to my brother Martin. A Black police officer who happened to be at the scene looked at my brother's ID and noticed her last name, Calixte, and said that it sounded familiar. My brothers jumped on this occasion to let them know that our cousin, Vianney Calixte, is a police officer and that he should contact him. They were then informed that they were being charged for discharging a firearm. They were out at friend's place. No firearms were discharged. They don't own any firearms. Their car was searched and they didn't find anything, but I guess because they're Black, they must be guilty of something. So they called the K9 unit, and even the dogs didn't have any luck and didn't find anything. But that was not enough. They dismantled the interior of the car, pulled the seats out, pulled the sides out, basically destroyed everything. While waiting in the police car, my brother heard that the police was looking for drivers of a silver Chrysler 300 involved in a shooting. However, they stopped my brothers who were driving a Black Lincoln. They also noticed the notes on the police computer. Apparently, they are members of a gang. They are related to a known criminal, Samuel Calixte, in Montreal, who we don't know and is not part of our family, but I guessed it must be true. It's written on the police computer. My brother asked them, "Where do you get this information? How do you validate it?" And he was told that it was entered by police officers. So any police officer just like that can write whatever they want. I guess looking back, it finally explained why my brothers were stopped every other day the 3 previous months. They probably had pissed off a police officer at some point in time by asking questions or challenging them, and they were punished with these notes. 4 hours later, they drove my brothers to the police station to officially book them. Based on what? I don't know. As they were about to begin the booking process, the Black officer returned and told the officer in charge to stop everything. Our guess is that they spoke to my cousin, and my cousin vouched for them. And they also didn't have any evidence. So just like that, my brothers were released and driven back to their car. What would have happened if we did not have a family member in the police forces? So my brothers were brought back to their car. They arrived just in time to stop the towing company and put their car together. As you can imagine, this was a traumatic experience for them. They had to pay out of pocket the cost of getting their car fixed, destroyed by the police. They both sustained injuries, being dragged about 20 feet on the ground. They were sitting in a police car, mortified, handcuffed, not knowing what was going to happen to them. They were almost charged with a crime that they did not commit, would have had to secure the services of a lawyer, could have potentially gone to jail, lose their job, leaving my nieces and nephews fatherless, and then my family would be part of that vicious circle. But what's the hardest is that they're living with the stress of that situation, and also from knowing that it could easily happen to them again. Why? Because they happened to be driving in Ottawa, in Canada, not the US, while they were Black.
I don't see color. I treat everyone the same. To say that you don't see color is inaccurate. It's like saying that you don't see gender. When it comes to color, how can you possibly fix something that you don't believe that you see? Seeing and recognizing skin color will help not to fall into making decisions based on such characteristics. Colorblind is to be blind to the consequences of color. I know what I'm about to say will sound strange, but not everyone should be treated equally. If you treat everyone the same, you might not give them what they need and adjusting according to their situation, just like on the picture. Before we go to the next comment, let's watch this video to provide us some more context.
What are examples of privilege according to this video? Examples of privilege that I've heard in the past are having your parents still together, having a father present in your life, having access to private education, to free tutors, not having to worry about bills and finances, having money to go to college or university, not worrying about basic needs, food, shelter, etc. Now that you understand a bit more the context of privilege, let's go to our next comments. Let me remind you that these are all comments we have heard from our colleagues, even from executives at CSE. We didn't make these up.
I don't have white privilege. It's not privilege, it's the norm. The Black community is underprivileged. We know that this is a controversial topic and many of you could be feeling uncomfortable or feeling attacked here, but privilege is defined as a special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to a particular person or a group. As a Black person, I am acknowledging that things are not equal. Sadly enough, we are not starting our race from the same start line. We are not saying that white people live perfect lives and do not struggle. No. We are saying that your struggle may have not been caused by the color of your skin. One thing that I would like to better understand is why there was so much resistance to acknowledge that as a white person, you have an advantage. He tell you the story of Amy Cooper and Christian Cooper encounter in Central Park because she gave a fine example of white privilege. And that encounter occurred the same day that George Floyd died. So Christian Cooper, a bird watcher, was walking in Central Park when he noticed a dog running around without a leash, and knowing that it was not supposed to happen because one, the dog will scare the birds, and the other point is like the dog is supposed to be on a leash all the time in Central Park. So he decided to go and talk to the owner, Amy Cooper. So he went and to tell her that she has to put her dog on a leash, but she was mad. She didn't want to hear anything about it. So she decided to call the police and tell the police that an African American was threatening her life. So why am I saying that this is an example of white privilege? Because it is grounded in the assumption that her whiteness and her feeling threatened would automatically result in a good outcome for her. So there was an assumption made about a black man who was asking her to simply obey the law, that she would be believed and he would not. So there is a narrative in her head. So put yourself in her shoes. So you will have that narrative in your head. So you say, if I call the police, they will believe me and take my side, and they will not believe him and not take his side, and my problem will be solved. So although not everyone will weaponize it the way she did it, the fact that white people knows about that narrative is part of the problem. Even in that racist expression, she used the politically correct word African American when she called the police. She kept saying over and over again in multiple interviews that she is not racist. Just like the well-known American neo-Nazi, anti-Semitic, and white supremacist Richard Spencer identifies himself, as not racist. Another way to look at privilege would be by looking at privilege within genders. If we were talking about privilege between men and women, would men feel attacked if I was saying there is a men privilege?
If I ask all of you, what do you consciously do daily to avoid being sexually assaulted? Do you think men would have the same answers as women? Let's try it. Men, type in, what do you consciously do daily to avoid being sexually assaulted? Answers we received in previous sessions were nothing, nothing at all, not a thing, nothing consciously. Now let's try with the woman. Woman, type in, what do you consciously do daily to avoid being sexually assaulted? In previous sessions, we've heard women say, wear appropriate clothing. Don't go out alone at night. Keep an eye on nearby vehicles. Tell my friends when and where I'm going. Avoid underground parking. Keep an eye on people around me. Walk with my keys in my hand. Never walk outside at dark. Avoid parking in creepy spots. Carry pepper spray in my purse. The men privilege in this case is that they don't have the additional mental tax of thinking of all these things because of their gender.
At this point of our presentation, if you are still struggling with the concept of white privilege, let me help you with these examples of our everyday life. As a white person, you can go to a public washroom and not worry about being mistaken for the cleaning staff, even when wearing business attire. You can wear jogging pants or a hoodie to go to Walmart. As a black person, you know that if you do, you'll be watched and followed by the undercover security guard. As a white person, you are not afraid to be stopped by the police while driving your luxury car because they think either you stole it or you did something shady to own it. As a white person, you won't be stopped at night by the police with the pretext that they don't see you from the outside, even when your windows are not tinted. As a white person, you can walk out of your home with your electronics in your hands without being scared to be arrested by the police because they think you stole it from your house. As a white person, when walking on the sidewalk and crossing the path with a white woman, you do not need to be extra careful not to look threatening. As a white person, you are innocent until proven guilty. As a black person, we are guilty until proven innocent. As a white person, you don't have to be afraid of losing a family member at the hands of those who are supposed to protect you, or just because of the actions of someone who's scared of you just because you're black. And if it's the case, it will still somehow be justified and justice won't be served. As a white person, when you walk in a meeting room, you will see others who look like you. As a black person, I often find myself being the only black person in that meeting room.
As a white person, you can walk in a store with your hands in your pocket. You can open your purse to look for something without thinking twice. As a black person, you might be accused of stealing if you dare to do so. As a white person, you can find a huge selection of your hair care products in the hair care section. You can find your spices in the spices aisle. As a black person, I often need to go to a small ethnic section or a specialized store to find them. As a white person, you can find something as simple as Band-Aids in the color of your skin. I have yet to find Band-Aids that are close to my skin color. As a white person, you can find a huge selection of dolls, of books, of Barbies that your children can identify with at stores. As a black person, although things have significantly improved, the selection is still limited. When growing up white, you are taught about the history of your people in schools. When I grew up, I had to educate myself on my own about the history of my ancestors. As a white woman, you have a huge selection of makeup and undergarment available to you. Did you know that as a black woman, my undergarment selection is limited because the nude ones, which are nowhere close to my skin tone, or the white ones, are going to show through white clothes for me? As a white person, You don't purposely put a picture of yourself on your Airbnb profile to make sure that hosts are aware that you are Black at booking. So there's less chances you get turned away when you arrive to pick up your key and they realize that you're Black. Same thing when selling items on Kijiji or any social platforms. You try to find a way to let potential buyers know ahead of time that you are Black. So you don't see their look of surprise when you open the door, or to simply avoid a situation where they suddenly change their mind and they don't want to purchase an item from you. As a white person, you don't have to think about choosing a white sounding name when your child is born, so that when they're older, they can at least make it to the interview process. To be honest with you, it was a deciding factor when I named my children Marcus Mackenzie and Brianna Mackenzie. I didn't want to remove opportunities for them by giving them Calix Mackenzie as a last name. Calix is too ethnic. It doesn't sound white enough. As a white person, you can leverage the network of your previous generations. Let it be your own family, or friends of the family, or friends of the family. As a Black immigrant, I do not have these networks. My parents did not grow up here in Canada. I am the one who has the responsibility to build these networks for my children and for future generations. As a white person, I'm 100% sure that when you go to an interview, you have people who look like you on the hiring panel. As a Black person, not once in my 23 years career in the public service was there someone who looked like me on a hiring panel. As a white person, you don't feel the constant pressure of having to prove yourself at work and feel like you have to work harder than your peers to demonstrate your competencies, to show your colleagues that you were hired because you are qualified and not to meet a quota. As a white person, you don't feel the pressure to be perfect all the time, because the minute you make one mistake, you're afraid that it will reinforce a stereotype, a bias, a prejudice that will be attributed to your entire race. That one mistake could mess things up for you and for all the other Blacks in your community. And they might even take away their future opportunities. As a white person, you don't instantly feel fear or anxiety when you're stopped by the police. Heck, not only when you're stopped, as soon as you see a police car. That anxiety and fear increases tenfold when your husband is at the wheel. That same fear and anxiety becomes paralyzing when all this is happening while you're in the States. We could go on, but we're going to leave it at that for now. Racism and microaggressions are death by 1,000 cut. Every time as a Black person, I am in any of those situations we described above, it is a cut. Based on only the examples that Jonathan and I shared today, and trust me, there are many, many more, try to imagine how many cuts I get in a day, in a week, in a year. It will give you an idea of how much pain I am carrying because I'm Black.
All Black people are the same. Sadly enough, I didn't just hear that at work, but also from my mother-in-law. Many of us share the same skin color, but just like white people, we don't have the same background, the same culture, the same language or religion. So you're asking yourself, what do we have in common? Yes, we are Black, but we are all unique. Here are more Examples of microaggression encountered by Black CSC employees. You know, when you are on the receiving ends of those aggression, trust me, they don't feel micro, but they feel macro. Are the whitest Black person I know. You sound white. Okay, wait a minute, Marie, is this meant to be a compliment? So basically, this means that as a Black person, I should be aiming to be whiter to be considered as normal? No, we are all unique regardless of our skin color.
I like your hair straight. Can I touch your hair? It's so soft. I thought it would feel differently. Hair is a sensitive topic for many in the Black community. Believe it or not, but I know it's just hair, but for generations, Black people have been made to feel like their hair is a sign of their inferiority in society. Back in the slavery days, the slave master would cut off Black people's hair as a way to control them and to erase their identity. We deal with legal and cultural discrimination on our hair all the time. When you have a minute, take the time to Google unprofessional hairstyles and look at what you will see on the images tab. About a year ago in South Africa, a company came under fire and had to close some of their stores for posting a racist ad. They posted an ad on their website where Black hair were described as frizzy, dull, and dry, and damaged, and white hair was described as fine, normal, and flat. This happened in a country where 85% of the population is Black. How Black does a country have to be for Black hair to be accepted? There is a lot of social pressure to stop Black folks from wearing their hair in its natural form. In Africa, hair was so important that you could tell a family's last name and social status just by looking at one's hairstyle. There were corporate policies, dress code in the army and in schools that prevented or punished Black people for wearing their hair in its natural form. It feels like our hair has to conform to this white standard of beauty, which is completely unfair because it's not an easy process. And let me tell you, it takes hours. We need to use chemicals, hot combs, and different tools that can not only damage our hair, but also our skin. It also seems like the only time Black hair can find some sort of cultural acceptance, it's when it's on the head of a white person. For example, during the same time that Black people were being punished for wearing braids, Bo Derek was recognized for starting a cross-cultural craze for wearing braids in one of her movies. As you can see, there is a lot of baggage and history when it comes to Black hair. I know that we always keep you all guessing with all your different hairstyles, but bottom line, feel free to compliment our hair. But just like you wouldn't touch a pregnant woman's belly without asking first, don't touch our hair without asking us first.
Discrimination happens not only to Black Canadians, but also to other visible minority groups, such as Asians, especially after the outbreak of the pandemic. Prejudices don't only apply to Black people. Some apply to other visible minorities, poor people, youth, elderly, women, LGBTQ2 community, and others. The title of our presentation is Being Black in Canada, not Discrimination in Canada. We know that biases, prejudices, and discrimination happen to other groups. As per the Clerk Call to Action on Anti-Racism and Inclusion in the Federal Public Service, the current focus is on increasing representation in the public service at all levels for Indigenous, Black, other racialized employees. There is no mentions of Asians, poor people, youth, the elderly, women, or members of the LGBTQ plus community. Bringing up other groups being discriminated against is a form of racial gaslighting, where you are consciously or unconsciously manipulating a person to dismiss their lived experience. It's like going to a funeral and right after the eulogy, you get up and you tell the loved one left behind, you know, others also died. Normally, we don't do that. We leave space and let the loved one talk about their experiences. We know it's part of the normal grievance process.
When something happens in the world, in a country, in a community, we often take the time to reach out to members of that community to check in on them. Just recently, this summer, many of the peers of my peers checked on me after the latest earthquake in Haiti. And it was also the case for the one back in 2010. I was asked how I was doing, if my family back home was safe. This was not necessarily the experience of the Black community at CSC and in many government departments. When everything happened with George Floyd, we were hurting. We were discouraged. I realized that although we were in 2020, not much had changed. Another one of us was killed, just like that. Like our life meant nothing. I had the same feeling when the riot in the US happened on January 6th of 2021. It was hard not to see the double standards that exist. If we compare the police's response at the Capitol with the one at Black Lives Matter's protest, you can see that as Blacks, we don't mean anything. We are disposable objects. We are last-class citizens of the world. I had the same feeling once again in April 2021 when an officer in Minnesota mistakenly took her gun instead of her taser and shot and killed Daunte Wright. I also felt discouraged when the story of Lieutenant Caron Nazario came out, where police officers in Virginia treated a complying U.S. Army officer in uniform like he was an animal. Watching all these events is frustrating, but there was something worse with the killing of George Floyd. I know that Derek Chauvin was found guilty, but however, back then, I was hurting. I wanted to vent. I wanted to talk. I wanted to cry. I wanted to scream. At times like these, many of us would have felt supported and cared for if our peers took the time to reach out to us to see how all this was impacting us. So all this to say, don't be silent. Don't be afraid to reach out to your colleagues. As a white person, you are in a unique position where your voice can be heard when racism and injustices occur. You have a choice. You can either be a bystander, where you witness racism and you choose not to get involved, or you can be an upstander or an ally, where you witness racism, you know that it's wrong, and you do all that you can to help make it right. Which one will you be? If you don't say or do anything, nothing will ever change. Remember, slavery was not abolished by Blacks. It was abolished by whites. We are all on the same boat and we have to work together, or else our entire society will sink. If you witness racism, please speak up and call it for what it is. If we work together, maybe we can keep our boat afloat.
What can you do? Reach out to your Black colleague and talk to them. Be hot in your conversation. If you remember, hot is honest, open, and transparent. Not saying anything is sometimes worse than saying something wrong. Research, go learn about the Black community and our views and concern. Look at our reference material at the end of this deck. Don't be afraid to be involved in your diversity and inclusion group so you can participate in initiatives and the change. Be a voice within your community. Don't be afraid to speak out when you witness racism. Be familiar with these public policies that promote racial equity and enforce them.
There are so many resources online, but we thought we would share with you some of CSC's Black community's favorite. I would like to invite you to take a look at them when you receive a copy of this presentation. If you want to learn more about privilege, take a look at What is Privilege and 400 Years Head Start videos. I would like to close this session by sharing with you what has been keeping me up at night this past couple of years. My son Marcus is 10 years old. He is an adorable boy who has a lot of energy and a kind heart. My husband and I raised him to be respectful, to be honest, to speak his mind, to stand up for what he believes in, to stand up to defend his family and his friends. We raised him not to be afraid to ask questions and challenge us when he simply doesn't understand or something just doesn't make sense to him. Given all the events of the last couple of years, I know that at some point in time, I will need to have the talk with him. Right now, at 10 years old, he is adorable. But give him a couple of years, because he is Black, he might be perceived as a threat. What has been worrying me lately is that the way we raised him to be, to speak his mind, to challenge, to question, to be honest, could potentially lead for him in the future to get arrested, to have conflicts with the police, and potentially be killed at police's hands. I know that at some point I will need to have a conversation with him. Right now, he is innocent. I don't think he understands that he is different from his white best friend, Ewan. He is probably unaware of the unfairness, the injustice, the inequalities the color of his skin might bring. The minute I have this conversation with him, I will damage his innocence. I will taint his views of the world. I might create fear, angst, and instill a negative perception of police. I have to find a way to explain to him that he is Black. And because he is Black, he will have to behave in a certain way in certain situation. And how he will be asked to behave will go against who we raised him to be. Marcus, if you're stopped by the police or any figure of authority, don't speak out. Do not defend yourself. Do not ask any questions. Do not stand up for yourself or for your friends. Especially, do not challenge them. Comply to their commands and keep your mouth shut. A white person might be able to engage the police in a dialogue, but if you do as a Black person, it could cost you your life. So basically, what I'm currently struggling with are the following questions. At what age will it be appropriate for me to have that conversation with him? At what age do I steal his innocence and tell him the reality of this world and potentially jade him? How do I approach this subject with him? How I handle that talk with my son could be the difference between him being free or incarcerated. It could make the difference between him being alive or dead. I still don't know how to go about this, and I would love to hear your ideas. What saddens me the most about all this is that the only reason I am in this position, the only reason I have these struggles is because of the color of my skin. So, ladies and gentlemen, this gives you an insight of some of the thoughts, concerns, and struggles I have as a Black person living in Canada.
You are probably wondering, what can you do? How can you help? Start by understanding your own biases. Use the Harvard tools that we provided and participate in unconscious bias training to know what to do about them. I know there is a couple more of them also provided by the Canada School of Public Service. Ensure that you have members of the marginalized community in your team, or have your work impacting Canada or Canadians be reviewed using their lens. Get to know your Black employees, understand their career aspiration, and sponsor them. Speak up when you see racism. Being not racist is not enough. You need to be anti-racist. Just like Werner Myers said it beautifully, diversity is being invited to the party. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Tell your colleagues about this session. We are registered members of Federal Speakers on Diversity and Inclusion. You can reach us through them and book a session.
So, what are your thoughts? Do you have any questions? This is a safe place to ask them. Let's talk.